Okay, so now we have an actual, now we actually get the story of Jephthah. Here in verse 17 of chapter 10, we actually start introducing Jephthah. When the Ammonites were called to arms and camped in Gilead, the Israelites, so they're on the move, they're ready to go, they're ready to fight. The Israelites assembled and camped at Mizpah. The leaders of the people of Gilead said to each other, this is basically the Gad, by the way, Gad, the tribe of Gad, which is up in the, again, east of the river, from where they were supposed to be. They settled in the land after the battle with Sihon. That's actually going to be an important aspect of this fight, because a major part of their dispute is going to be who actually properly controls this territory. Here's this map. Gad is this section right here on the east side and in the middle. This section, that blue section right there, in the east side of the Jordan. This was not originally part of the territory that God had assigned the Israelites, but he did allow them to settle there in the days of Moses as they were moving into the Promised Land, and they were attacked by Sihon as the aggressor. He was the king of the Amorites, who attacked them as they tried to move through. And they defeated him, and Og, king of Bashan. We read about that a lot back in Numbers. And the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh wanted to settle in that land. And Moses said they could if they went with their brothers across the river and helped them conquer their land, which they did. And so when they honored that commitment, they were allowed to go back to their land, which they had already conquered and settled there. And again, for the most part, they've been secured. Reading throughout the book of Judges so far, this territory has not been under the gun of the enemy invasion to the degree the actual Promised Land territory has been. But now they are. And a part of the dispute is going to be about who actually controls this territory. So anyway, the leaders of the people of Gilead said to each other, whoever will launch the attack against the Ammonites will be the head of all those living in Gilead. Who's going to become the new top guy. Now, I guess not quite the king, but close to it. Now, Jepthah the Gileadite was a mighty warrior. His father was Gilead. His mother was a prostitute. Gilead's wife also bore him sons. I don't know if he had Gilead before he had the rest of his sons. Maybe he was sleeping around in the days before he got married. Or maybe it was a shrine prostitute. You know, they had these... we talked before about these Baal and Asherah, worship sites where they would offer the sacrifices to Baal and Asherah and then culminate that with an act of copulation with a male or female shrine prostitute who was there. It could have been that. It could have been a shrine prostitute that he had this with, or maybe he just got tired of his wife one day and decided to sleep with some other younger woman. Who knows, going to do that. I don't know. At any rate, he had sons from his wife, but he also had an illegitimate son from a prostitute for some reason or another. Gilead's wife bore him sons, and when they were grown up, they drove Jepthah away. You are not going to get any inheritance in our family, they said, because you are the son of another woman. So Jepthah fled from his brothers and settled in the land of Tob, where a group of adventurers gathered around him and followed him. This is basically the same thing as what we saw back in the previous chapter. But remember that Gael son of Ebed dude? He had his own band of buddies. And even Abimelech, who was, of course, the usurper in Shechem, hired a bunch of mercenaries and vagabonds and wanderers around with money that the leaders of Shechem gave him. Okay, so this was essentially the same thing. Jepthah is basically the leader of his own gang of thugs. A band of mercenaries, whatever they are. I don't even know really how you would compare them in a word that we would use from our cultural history. But they were basically just a bunch of brigands that were wandering around. I don't know if they were bad guys. I don't know. Maybe. He was a mighty warrior. Verse 1 says he was a mighty warrior. the Lord called Gideon that when he first met him, and Gideon didn't believe him. Apparently he would believe that about Jephthah. That's why they want to go get him here in a minute, to be their leader and fight their battles for them. So I guess he did have fighting prowess. It was not just a brigand. He apparently had some talent and skill, but he was an illegitimate son, and they did not want him to be part of their legitimate family. Sometime later, when the Ammonites made war in Israel, so this all happened kind of before the rise of the Ammonites, when Jepthah was born and when he was young, and now he's all grown up and he's got his band of merry men or whatever, his adventurers, his brigands, whatever they are. Now they're in trouble. So that happens, and then the Ammonites are pressing in. So the Ammonites are making war in Israel, and then the elders of Gilead go to Jepthah from the land of Tob. They went to get Jepthah from the land of Tob. Come, they said, be our commander so that we can fight the Ammonites. So he's the best guy they've got. And they know it. They wouldn't, I'm sure, have chosen this guy unless they knew that he was the best guy they had. They wouldn't have wanted to reach out to this dude of all people to be their leader and be their savior, unless they had to. Okay, this is not the guy they would have gone with if they had any other option. Jepthah said to them, didn't you hate me and drive me from my father's house? Why do you come to me now when you're in trouble? The elders of Gilead said to him, nevertheless, we are turning to you now. So that's right, we did. We drove you away. Okay, it's like, but we're turning to you now. Come with us to fight the Ammonites, and you'll be head over all who live in Gilead. So previously, they just said, be our commander. That wasn't enough for him. Now he's gotten a commitment from them to make him their head, their leader. Not just their army commander, but their leader. Jepthah answered, suppose you take me back to fight the Ammonites, and the Lord gives them to me. Will I really be your head? The elders of Gilead, he is still skeptical. The elders of Gilead replied, the Lord is our witness. We will certainly do as you say. So the Lord is not necessarily picking Jepthah here, okay? We read about, in the introduction to all of this, that he said back in verse 14, go out and cry to the gods you have chosen, and let them save you when you're in trouble. And they're begging him to do something for them. It doesn't say here that he's picking Jepthah. He'll use Jepthah, he will. But this whole section here is not presented as though the Lord himself is picking Jepthah. These people are. They recognize him as their best guy to go out and fight the Ammonites. And he accepts it, although on the condition that they make him their head. And they're using the name of the Lord to kind of have their discussion go back and forth. But there's no indication that this is actually the guy that God picked. The elders of Gilead replied, the Lord is our witness. We will certainly do as you say. So Jepthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and commander over them. And he repeated all his words before the Lord in Mizpah. So he is invoking the name of the Lord here. It's not like he doesn't know the Lord. He is using the Lord, and he is swearing his oath before the Lord. But this is not necessarily the guy the Lord would have picked. This is the guy that the leaders of Gilead picked. Then Jepthah sent messengers. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and start a new video here.